Have you been dreaming of boats lately? Ships, canoes, ferries, anything like that? By ferry, I mean Ferry, by the way, not the woodland spirit kind. If you have, this video is going to be me giving you some insights on what that dream might mean. Because, well, I felt inspired to do this because I personally have been dreaming of boats and ships and ferries and stuff a lot lately. And so I figured what better way to start a dream dictionary slash dream symbol series than by using some of my own dreams and symbols as examples, you know? So, general meaning of boats and ships and ferries. We're traveling over the water, right? So this is something that is combining the element of water, because in order to move a boat, you have to be on water of some sort. So it's combining the watery realm of like emotions and feelings and the hidden realms and the subconscious and the psychic and the intuitive and the relational and the interpersonal, and you're taking that symbolism and kind of combining it with the symbolism of, I would say, air. I feel like boats are very airy in their combination with the symbolism of the water because they are floating right on top of the water, right? And they are a mode of travel, they're a mode of communication, and air is a like transportive element, and so is water. And in addition to that, if you bring in tarot symbolism, one of the few, I think possibly the only tarot card in the Smith Rider-Waite deck that has a boat on it is the Six of Swords, which is a swords is the air suit, right? And so you have the Six of Swords, and it's a symbol of a boat going away. Like it's three figures on a boat, like a parent and a child, and then a ferry driver or like a boat person who is like steering, paddling the boat, you know? And in that, because the boat is heading away from the viewer, like we see the backs of all of the people in it, you get the sense that you are departing away from a difficult situation, right? You're moving on to what is hopefully calmer waters. And you can tell that because the water in the card is very like still and placid. It's not looking stormy, and the sky behind it is like gray. It's not particularly cheerful, it's not particularly dark, it's neutral, you know? But for example, I had a recent dream where I saw a version of the Six of Swords card that looked very different from the traditional one. In my dream, this Six of Swords card was instead, it was like a wooden boat, but there were no human figures visible on it at all. It was like it was like the point of view was like you were bobbing your head above the surface of the water and you were looking up at the boat and you see it coming towards you, right? And instead of being this like middle of the day, gray sky, still waters vibe, it was instead kind of like a sunset, like right around like or shortly after sunset, twilight kind of vibe. And so the colors were a lot more dark blues with like hints of pink from the setting sun in the sky. And the water was also deep blue. So you can think of it as this is a very different interpretation of what the boat means. Rather than moving away from calm waters, this feels like this feels much more watery because it's much more dark blue and like much more nighttimey. And it's like something coming towards you because there's also that hint of like fire with the sunset vibes. And then you can also take the sunset to mean like seventh housey things, right? Because the seventh house is the place where the sun goes to set in the chart. So this could also be like something interpersonal, one on one with another person, is coming towards me, right? Because the boat looks like it's coming towards me. And so that's one way you can interpret, like, is the boat coming or is it going? What are the surrounding waters looking like? You know, are they still? Are they murky? Are you going out into an ocean? Which, like, if the boat's on the ocean, that's much more of a like, ooh, the vast, like, unknown, like, unexplored maybe could be like a vibe. Like you're heading into unfamiliar territory, or you're heading into territory that makes you feel small and like you're a little bit more at the whims of fate. Versus like if you're dreaming about taking a boat down a river or something, that's very different. That's much more like you have a single course and you have like a clear path and a clear direction. So it's a lot more like directed, like you're on a path, you're heading towards a particular destination or you're heading away from a particular destination. And then if you have a boat on a lake, for example, a lake is also then very different because it's like it's a contained environment, but there isn't like a clear path like there is with the river, right? So you have a little bit of the sense of like with the ocean that you get that it's more exploratory, but on the other hand, it's not as vast and unknown, right? There are boundaries to a lake. You can see the edges of a lake, or at least like you can reach the edges of a lake more easily than you can the edges of the ocean. So yeah, in that way, you can interpret the type of water that the boat is on to see what the symbolism means. You can determine the direction the boat is going to figure out what the symbolism means. You can also look at, I already mentioned, like the sky and the rest of the weather. Is it clear? Is it stormy? Is it windy? Is it sunny? Those will all give you symbols. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention the type of boat. Duh. The type of boat is also so important because it's like, are you on a little canoe, which is like self-contained and it can have maybe like one or two people on it. And it's like, it's like if you're like a little canoe on like a big ocean, you might feel like you're not prepared for like big changes that are coming, for example. Versus if you're on like a big, excuse me, versus like if you're on a big ship feels a lot more stable, right? So being on a big ship in a big ocean might feel a little bit more like you're strong and you're supported, right? But then again, you have to think about how are you feeling about this, because being on a ship can also be like, oh, you're kind of like one in the crowd and there's like this big like metal institution around you that's insulating you from the water. So it could be a sign if you're like on a big ship on the water, it could be that you're like avoiding contact with the water. You're like trying to keep a lot of distance, a lot of barriers between you and the feelings and the emotions and the like messy, unseen relational parts of life, right? If you're on a ferry, that's a lot more of like a direct travel kind of vibe, right? Ferries are supposed to take you from point A to point B. They're like a bus on the water. So there's a lot more of that sort of energy of like this is something more standard or more routine or something more goal oriented. So with a ferry, it's a lot more like you're trying to get to a destination. If you're on something really small and like one person, like a kayak or something, then maybe this could be a symbol that you are like going. That's like even if you're like on just like a river or something, being on a kayak is pretty like precarious, right? It's very like solo adventurous, even if you have other people with you. Like there's a certain amount of like you're really putting as little disconnect between you and the water as possible, but you are still bringing in that airy element of floating on top of the water. You're not in the water itself, right? It would be different if you were having a dream about being submerged in the water because then you're in the feelings. But no, air is like the airiness of boats is like you are floating on top of the water and there is something, a container, a vessel of communication that is mediating your experience with the water. That's the thing about water and air, is that even though they're both like, water is more downward going or introverted as an element, it's denser, and air is much more light, it's upward going, but they both go outwards. They're both very expansive elements, and I've heard them referred to as transportative elements. They don't change the nature of a thing, they just move it from one place to another, right? As opposed to like fire and earth are transformative elements. They will change the nature of something, right? Earth, by like, it can bury it and make it decay, and fire can burn it to ash or just cook it and crisp it up. But air and water don't do that. Air and water move things around without altering the fundamental nature of a thing. So there's something that might be being asked to move around, something that is asking to be shifted from the dream realm, you know? And then with all symbols, like, how do you feel during this symbol, you know? And what is happening in the dream? Another example from my own personal dreams, I once had a dream that I was trying to board a ferry with a bunch of people that I like. It was a bunch of cast members from like a YouTube channel that I watch, right? So I'm getting on a ferry with these other like YouTube people that I watch, but we're like going up these like rickety metal steps that are kind of like attached to it, the way that, you know, when people are boarding a plane, they roll up that like big staircase to get on the plane. It was like that, but for the boat. And then what happened is, as me and two other people were almost at like the top, it detaches and all three of us fall into the water. And then we realize, and we're like hanging on to these metal stairs at first, but then we realize we have to let go of them because they're going to drag us down. And so we let go of the stairs. So there's a whole host of other symbolism there outside of just the boat, but also what's happening around the boat. So in that case, I would interpret that dream for myself as like, okay, I'm getting on a ferry with these other YouTubers. And since I am kind of making YouTube videos myself, even though I don't necessarily think of myself as a YouTuber, I'm just a person posting stuff on YouTube, it's like I maybe interpret that as like I have a goal to want to maybe make my videos have some quality like those that I watch or those that I admire. Like, I want to change something about myself to achieve that, but maybe because I then go and fall into the water before getting to do that, before I'm able to get on the ferry, maybe it's a sign that like I feel like something is dragging me down from being able to do that, because, you know, I'm holding on to this like metal staircase and it's so huge, and I have to let it go or else it's going to drown me. So it's like, you know, in that way, you can take the literal events that are happening in a dream and symbolically apply them to your life. Or another example of a boat dream was, I had a boat dream that I was in a like small canoe with someone. And this was someone that I was like flirty with. Like, we're like coming from like a nighttime festival of some sort, and we're trying to find somewhere to, you know, go have a little alone time, shall we say. And so we end up on this boat, right? And it starts off in a lake. So again, bringing back that symbolism of like, this is territory that feels like big. It's not like restricted to a certain path with like this person or this dynamic. And this is not someone I know IRL, by the way. They looked a little like someone I know IRL, but like different enough that I'm like, I don't think this is about them. And it also, but it felt, first of all, you can see how you feel in the dream. So the person that I was with, it felt a little bit like my first like boyfriend that I dated from like senior year of high school to senior year of college. So there was that sort of like young, innocent, playful vibe to it. And then we're going from like this lake where we're on this little boat, and we go into like a little channel of water that is like behind this big gray concrete building. So there's a strong element of privacy, right? So you're going from like this big open space where people could see you, even though it's like nighttime. You're going into this like little channel where you're hidden behind a building and it's a lot more private and secure. And the other person like takes this big like staff and like wedges like the boat so that we don't float out into the canal. And then we proceed to try and have intimate times, but instead of being able to like there's like some playful like touchy happening, and we do both strip completely without clothes, but like it gets kind of goofy and comical, and like there's like another boat next to us and the other person is like half flopped onto there like ass up, and it's just like instead of being sexy it gets like silly, right, when it's in private. So in that way you can take that symbolism of like what is like the dynamic of connection that I'm seeking maybe in my like personal relationships. Like maybe I'm trying to focus less on like passion and focus more on playfulness and, like a sort of light-hearted vibe. So that's another way that you can interpret dream symbols. What else about boats? Boats can also be, because they're air on top of water, they can also be like signs of news coming, of course, communications incoming, especially if they're communications from like overseas. If you know people who live overseas from you or live really far away from you, could have, like they're sending a message in a bottle kind of vibes. And what else about boat symbolism? Boats could also be a sign of travel. So, you could be traveling or someone could be traveling towards you. Boats could also be potentially a sign of like a need for recreation or relaxation. Like if you associate boats with like doing activities, like if you're like, I don't know, part of like culturally like people around you go on boats during vacation time, or they go on boats to relax, or maybe you take a boat to go fishing, or maybe like just like if you're the kind of person who like you and culturally people around you use boats as a place of recreation, that could be an important symbol of like it's a vacation kind of vibe for you. Okay, I think that is all I have to say about boats and ships and ferries and the water. Oh, I guess one more type of ship. A cruise ship can go and form back into that sort of vibe of like for recreation, but it's even more like it has that recreational vibe, but it's more detached because it's like cruise ships are big and you're also surrounded by a lot of people. So I feel like cruise ships are maybe an indicator of like a collective ignoring of some sort of emotional thing. Like it's a collective, like, I don't want to say delusion, but like a collective sort of like structure of avoidance. It feels like cruise ships to me. But again, that's just my feelings about cruises personally. You might feel very differently about cruises, and if you do, they will probably mean something very different for you. That's the most important thing you always have to remember about dream symbolism. You must interpret it in your context. And you can watch, I have another video about 5 important things plus one bonus thing for how to get better at dream interpretation and dream recall. So you can watch that video if you'd like. I'll link to it in the description below. If you have a particular boat dream or water dream or something, leave it in the comments and I will try to help you decipher it. If you have other dream symbols that you would like to request me make a video on, drop them in the comments. Like this video, subscribe to my channel, it's free. And if you want a personal dream interpretation reading, maybe it's like something more personal, you just want to get more in depth with it, I'm offering sliding scale dream interpretation sessions. You can book on my website, sonaliens.com/booking. That's sonaliens.com/booking. $22 to $55 sliding scale, pay what you can. And yeah, that's all I have for you today. Thanks so much for watching and listening. Take care. Bye.